This is tutorial 2 for Google Forms. Let's start by looking at some of the form settings. We're going to first type in a question, and let's just start with first name. I always recommend that you separate first name and last name as two separate questions because some people might enter it in first space last, some might enter it in last space first, last comma first, etc. So having them as two separate questions allows you to better organize the data, and it will also allow you to sort the data inside of your spreadsheet that you'll receive from your Google form. So I always recommend that you separate these two questions. One of the nice tools about this is that you will actually no longer have unnamed papers, and that is because you can also mark this question as required. So students will be required to answer this question before moving on or completing the form. So that's another nice little tool to have. You can also duplicate the question. So say I want this same type of question. I just noticed that this was on paragraph. I'm actually going to change this to short answer. So I can duplicate this, and I can also make this one say last name and make it a required question as well. And you'll also notice that the questions also have an asterisk beside them to mark them as being required. Very good. Okay, so let's look at creating a section. So right now, this is just one long section. If I were to add in more and more questions, they would all appear on the same page. Sometimes you might want the questions to appear on multiple pages. So I can select this button down here and add a section. And you'll see now I have section 1 of 2, and here's the first section, and here's the second section. So I could title this first section maybe student information, and I title this second section personal information. And so if I were taking this quiz, and you can actually preview it here, I would only see the first two questions here, and then I would get a next button that would take me to the next question. So back to our first page. So that is how you create different questions. You can make them required, and you can add a section. Some of the other tools you have over here are you can add titles and descriptions, add images, add videos, so you can actually embed YouTube videos as well. Looking up here at the top, you'll see different tools here. Add add-ons, the color palette, preview, and settings. We looked at preview just a moment ago. Let's look at the color palette. You can select this to change the theme of your form. You can change the color, or you could upload a picture and change that as to be your theme. They have some here that have already been set for you, or you can upload your own or from some albums. So I'm going to change it to this little bubbles background, and it changes it for me. Now looking at the settings gear. From here, I can have my form collect all the email addresses for me. So a user would be prompted to enter in an email address at the very beginning. So I'm going to turn that on. Users can also receive a receipt. It will actually be like a transcript of their form. You can set it to if they only request it or for always. You can limit them to only having one response, or that they can edit the response. Under presentation, you can show the progress bar. So if it'll show by percentages or by page numbers. You can shuffle the question order. I don't prefer to do this because most of the forms need to be in a specific order. And you can show a link to submit another response. Quizzes is another setting that you can use, and you could use this if you wanted to make a graded quiz. We will look at that later. So because I checked email addresses to be collected, that actually added a first question for me in a very specific way. Email addresses, valid email address. So you can tell that this is something from Google, and I can't actually change that. This is different than if I were to type in my own question for that. And so it's always best if Google just collects the email addresses for you. This is the end of tutorial number 2, form settings.